It's a privilege for me to be talking to you on World Mental Health Day. I'm Elliot Zeisel. I'm a psychoanalyst, and now I've become an actor. I'd like to tell you something about how the series group came into being. Every year for probably 36 years, I've been going to the American Group Psychotherapy Association annual conference. For group psychotherapists, it's summer camp in the winter. It's an ingathering of the tribe for a week of learning. And it's immersive learning. It's experiential learning. It's not the kind of conference where people play golf in the morning and go to a meeting in the afternoon. On one of these occasions, I was at a session where my friend Mullen Lesh was giving a talk. And at the end of the talk, a number of us stayed around to ask questions. And I noticed this fellow standing to my right with a press pass and speaking with a French accent. So he's asking a lot of questions. So I got interested. And he said, well, my name is Alexis Lloyd, and I'm a filmmaker, and I've optioned the rights to the novel The Schopenhauer Cure. Schopenhauer Cure is a novel written by another colleague of ours, Irv Yalom, and it's the best explication of group in novel form. Yalom is a world-renowned group therapist who became a novelist, and this is his best way of explaining how and why group works, why it's effective. So Alexi goes on to tell me that he's optioned the rights and he wants to make a film based on informed by the novel. So I said to him, well, great idea, but it'd be a good idea to be a member of a group if you're going to make a film about group. And I gave him my contact information, never expecting to hear from him. And then a couple of weeks later, he actually called to ask for an interview. Came to my office. I learned something about him. His father had been a psychoanalyst in Paris. His uncle, his great uncle, were analysts in London. One of them actually met Freud. And I was intrigued. And I invited Alexi to join a group with the provision that he come to group as a member and not as a researcher. That's how we began our collaboration. The other thing that happened was a couple of days after I met Alexi, I went to my own analyst, Dr. Dolores Welber. You can't be an analyst in this world without having your own analyst. Your psychic instrument has to be attended to on a daily, if not weekly basis. So one of the ways we attend to our instrument is we keep talking. I've been talking to Dr. Welber for, at that time, 47 years. And I was on the couch and I was telling her the story of the conference. She knows all the people at the conference. And I said, I met a French filmmaker. And she said, oh, you met Alexi? And I said, what? You know him? How do you know him? She said, he's my upstairs neighbor. I said, what? And she said, well, he came down here a couple of weeks ago to tell me about the project. I suggested to him that he go to the conference, the American Group Psychotherapy Association conference, and learn about group. And lo and behold, he met me. So for the first time in 47 years, I actually extended my hand behind my head. Dr. Welber took my hand. She clasped it briefly, but gently and firmly. And I said, this is the meaning of the Yiddish word bashert, kismet, fate. This was meant to happen. And that's how the project began. Group teaches you how to live on the edge of your emotional seat. It teaches you how to process experience in real time. You learn how to know what you're feeling in the moment and how to talk about it in a constructive way. It was a privilege for me to work with actors who are gifted at diving deep into their own emotions and inhabiting the personalities of the character they've been asked to play. And from my perspective, my job didn't change from my day job. The job of acting in that situation didn't change much from my experience of being an analyst in group on a daily basis. The actors I worked with, to a person, kept asking me about my acting training. And I would respond by saying, well, actually, I don't have any training, except I've been reading my lines for the last 45 years. The experience of working with the actors was like the experience of working with patients. Some of the actors, just like patients, on a given day, some person might be more accessible and available to taking a deeper look at themselves and risking the possibility of saying something difficult in the moment. And on another day, they might be more hidden and frightened and resistant to the process. So the gift of working on the project group was to see how that resistance got revealed and worked with just as it does in group. In July of 2020, during the height of the COVID crisis, we were very lucky to continue the process. The actors all agreed to be filmed working in isolation, working using Zoom, the same way I work with patients every day on Zoom. It captured their experience of isolation. It captured their experience of missing the physical contact that they were accustomed to having on a daily basis with people. The daily experience of being seen and recognized by the informal network of people who constitute their life, whether it's the grocer on the corner or the owner of the newspaper shop where they buy a newspaper. Who buys newspapers these days? Nobody buys newspapers. The experience of walking around the neighborhood and just being seen by shopkeepers who recognize you, that's all gone. And in a very poignant way, the actors captured that. They also talked about the experience of the racial crisis in this country, the racial tensions in this country. And they took a deep dive into considering how the Black Lives Matter movement was affecting everyone's life on a daily basis, and how it continues to affect people, and hopefully help them think about themselves and how they might participate in healing some of these things that plague us in this time of COVID. The experience of COVID, of course, has invited everyone I work with on a daily basis to become much more aware and come in contact with the isolation that COVID enforces. There's a lot of discussion in the groups I work with about grief, the loss, whether it's the loss of physical contact with someone close to them or the actual loss of someone in their life who perished as a result of COVID. There's anxiety on a daily basis. I think most of the people I'm aware of wake up to a certain level of anxiety that, again, is unprecedented. And that anxiety has to do with the stresses and strains of COVID, the political turmoil in this country, and the awareness that global warming, the crisis in nature that is surrounding us and inhabiting this world, that's affecting people in a very direct way. Group has been a wonderful balm in the process of helping people address all those discomforts. Remember, one of the goals of group is to learn how to tolerate the discomfort that life brings with all of its surprises and all of its unpredictable and arbitrary nature. So this last run through COVID has really been a powerful experience in coming to grips with how really out of control life can become very quickly, and how we respond as human beings with a range of emotions that are sometimes very, very difficult to tolerate and hard to manage. The one thing that unites people in the COVID crisis, in the group process, is the shared experience, is being able to hear yourself reflected back to yourself in the experience of other people. It's having people witness your own experience that is healing. In this time of COVID, we have an opportunity to learn more about ourselves and about our connections to the people around us. COVID has also given us an opportunity to learn about our need for connection and our need for disconnection. You know, there are some people who are blessed with the challenges of taking care of young children and other family members. And living in close proximity, educating children, feeding children, making sure they're safe on a minute-to-minute basis is not something that we're accustomed to, because most of us who have children, young children especially, are accustomed to having those kids leave the house in the morning and come back in the afternoon. So that for some people who are challenged that way, the need to disconnect the need to unplug and to be alone, to have time to read, to have time to contemplate, is a much sought after experience, is a needed experience. And group is, again, another place where even people who need to be disconnected can be disconnected while connected. So on this World Mental Health Day, I'd like to encourage you to think about accessing groups through Zoom, whether it's a church group, a community group, a psychotherapy group, a 12-step group, whatever the group is. I would encourage you to be in contact with other people as much as your emotional system requires and needs.